Good evening. My name is Amy Ferreira. I'm Director of Enrollment here at Perkins School for the Blind. Thank you for joining us for this three-part webinar series brought to you by College Success at Perkins. Perkins is leading the way in systematic change. We are making a difference. We are improving outcomes for visually impaired students all across the country. We are so grateful to be able to connect with you tonight virtually. We'll kick things off with a guided tour of the College Readiness Resource Center with both Leslie Thatcher, Director of College Success here at Perkins, and Annie Tulkin, Founder and Director of Accessible College. Before we get started, let's go through a few housekeeping pieces. Today's programming will be recorded and accessible to you post-webinar. All cameras and microphones will remain turned off for the duration of the webinar, and closed captioning is available. You can access it at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. And I'll be moderating for you tonight. As we go, please drop your questions in the Q&A. The College Success Compass team is here behind the scenes, ready to get your questions answered, and they'll be dropping links as we go. We'll also have time after we wrap up for more Q&A. So let's get warmed up. I have a few questions for you. If you'd like to participate, please drop your questions in the Q&A box. First off, where are you from? We've had registrants from over 20 different states, so let us know where you're zooming in from tonight. And most importantly, what's your role? Are you the parent? Are you an educator? Or are you the student? And lastly, we'd like to know what you'd like to take away from this series. As those questions roll in, or those answers roll in, let me go over the agenda. So we'll start things off tonight with how did we get here? It's been quite the journey. The team will share relevant, impactful data with you. Next, we'll move on to changes in law and expectations. Then we'll lead you through what we've learned and take a guided tour of the Resource Center. And lastly, like I said, we'll open the floor for questions. So at this time, I'd love if Annie and Leslie could unmute themselves and come on camera and introduce.
All right, I will start. This is Leslie Thatcher. I am the Director of College Success at Perkins. I bring background as an educator with over 30 years of working with college aspiring students as a teacher, an executive functioning coach, a learning specialist, college counselor, among many other jobs. I've worked with thousands of college aspiring students with various barriers to college readiness, and have seen it from both sides of the desk, both on the admission side and the school side. So I am excited to be here with you today. I bring that background and the collaboration with Annie to this project, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you're looking for today as well. Annie?
Thanks, Leslie. Hi, everybody. I'm Annie Tulkin. I'm the founder and director of Accessible College. At Accessible College, I provide college preparation and transition support services for students with physical disabilities, including students who use wheelchairs and mobility devices, and students with chronic health conditions like autoimmune disorders, Crohn's disease, diabetes, and mental health conditions, as well as students with sensory impairments like visual impairments and blindness. I have over 12 years of experience in the disability field, and nearly 6 of those years were spent as the Associate Director of the Academic Resource Center at Georgetown University, which is Georgetown's Disability Support Office.
Great, thank you both. Could you give us a little background on the College Readiness Resource Center? And really, what inspired this development, Leslie?
Thank you so much, Amy. And just with Annie's introduction, you can see why we had her join our team. It's definitely collaboration makes it stronger. So a little background about how we landed here today. In about 2016, Perkins decided to tackle concerning statistics, that we'll detail in a few moments, related to college completion for students with vision impairment. We knew they needed additional skills, and we borrowed a gap year model with intensive residential training over 9 months in our Watertown, Massachusetts campus to address this. We included blindness and academic skill building and college experiences for students aged 18 to 22. We worked with students from 7 states in 2 cohorts between the years fall of 2018 through the spring of 2020. We impacted 13 students total. We all know what happened in 2020. A little pandemic forced many educational institutions to pivot, and we were really no different. We at College Success ended our residential program, but we had the opportunity to take what we learned, the large gaps that we saw in the students we worked with, and we were able to create programming in a different way, informed by the pandemic. Really, we realized we needed to start earlier with students, and we needed to direct their skill development over time. And we also realized that we needed to provide additional support, guidance, and training for parents and educators, many of whom have never done a college search in the early 2020s. So we were able to create a virtual direct service program called Compass that serves high school students, grade 9 through 12, their families, and their educators. So it's a whole different model that we found to be very effective. We're running our second cohort now. But importantly, in addition to shifting the age group and the profile of who we worked with, we realized we needed to create additional tools that could be used out there in the field nationally, even if someone didn't have the opportunity to be involved in our direct service programming. We're here to help everyone. And so this really allowed us to create why we're here today, the College Readiness Resource Center. So today we're discussing the most, probably, in my opinion, as an educator, important efforts is this College Readiness Resource Center. It's a living, active set of resources, mostly in the form of recorded webinars, articles, very thoughtfully created articles to really walk anyone through pieces of information they need to have to make better informed decisions as they begin to consider post-secondary options. Along with the College Readiness Resource Center, we have created other user-friendly tools. We'll discuss a couple of them today. And we've launched national conversations through presentations, networking, and a variety of other techniques to move this conversation forward in a variety of ways. When we began to create the College Readiness Resource Center, we realized we needed a broad range of experience. We knew our students brought not only vision impairment, but often other disabilities, and we needed the wisdom of a broad range of experts. So as you can see, we brought in Annie Tulkin, who helped spearhead and coordinate this effort and contributed several articles to it. We had the wonderful writing skills of Francesca Crozier-Fitzgerald, who is a TVI herself, as well as a professional writer. She's also now the new director of the CDI Center at the Lighthouse Guild in Miami. So we were thrilled to have her wonderful and rich background to contribute to this. And we also brought in the expertise of a professional college counselor, Susan Carlson, who is got over 2 decades of experience here in the Boston area and internationally providing college counseling. So she's also the parent of a student with a disability. So we brought breadth and depth to our team, and we are so excited to reveal this today. And one final note is I'd be remiss if I did not note the correct team of the Perkins marketing and web team that helped make all of our ideas beautiful, user-friendly, and available to you just with a click of a button. So without further ado, I think we're ready to go.
Great. So why is this resource important?
I'll give a little introduction, but I know Annie has some good information for us. So one of the things we learned immediately in running our direct service programs was that many families and students were not aware of the changes that take place when a student transitions out of high school and into college. The rules change, and the supports that a student was used to receiving as part of the IEP process disappear when they head to college and the workforce, anything after high school. And that, if not thought through carefully and over time, can be a really like a cliff you're falling off of. So we had that in the back of our mind of how do we help families on board to this shifting reality with detailed information. And we're going to give you a little bit of that today. So what do you think, Annie? Do you think you're ready to walk us through some of the crucial ideas we need?
Yeah, grounding ourselves in the data is a really great place to start. So we know that the federal data tells us that approximately 19% of undergraduate students report having a disability, and that includes students with learning disabilities, ADD, mobility impairments, psychiatric disabilities, or mental health conditions. sensory impairments, and health conditions. It's important to note that this is self-reported data. So this is data drawn from the number of students who have gone to the Disability Support Office, self-disclosed, and are receiving accommodations. So the actual number of students with disabilities on any given college campus is likely much higher than that, because there's probably students who either don't know they can request accommodations or who have chosen to not go through the process to request accommodations for whatever reason. We also know that approximately 7% of college students who report having a disability indicate that they have a physical disability or a mobility impairment. So this number includes wheelchair users and other mobility device users and students with mobility impairments. But because there's no one standard for categorizing disabilities at the college level, often students with visual impairments, blindness, deafness, and hearing impairments are included in that number of students with physical disabilities. The other thing that we know just tangentially is that most disability support offices are seeing the highest increase in requests for accommodations in the area of mental health. So students are seeking accommodations for mental health. Leslie, you wanted to share that last stat, didn't you?
Well, there's and as we're particularly focused on students aspiring to attend college with vision impairment, it's also, there's an interesting statistic we also need to consider, that 71% of students with vision impairments enter college within 8 years of completing high school. That's national data that's been collected over many years. What we also know is of that 71% who enroll in college, only 42.8%, that was as of about 2018, complete a degree or some sort of terminal completion of their programming. And that gives us some insight that there's a lot of folks trying, there's a lot of folks who may not intend to complete a degree. There's a lot of folks, though, who are intending to complete a degree, but it does not work out. And that's why we're here today. We know the process of getting to college and completing college is a big one, and there's multiple layers that our students face. And that's why I wanted to present that. And
powerful data for sure. Great. Well, okay, first we have to talk about the changes in laws from K to 12 to college. And Annie, why is this relevant?
Yeah, so this is really foundational to the college readiness resource that we created. And so it's important for people to understand that there are different laws that support students at different points in their life. So first, we have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And that's the law that governs special education services for students with disabilities and provides for free and appropriate public education services in the K through 12 setting. So if your student has an IEP, an individualized education program, it's because of that law. If your student's in a private school, those schools are not bound by IDEA. However, that's a good segue to talk about Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which protects against discrimination on the basis of a disability. So your student might have what's known as a 504 plan, which outlines their accommodations. Private and public schools have to adhere to Section 504, and it applies to both the K through 12 setting and to college. When a student graduates high school and moves on to college, the accommodations process is governed by the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. And the ADA provides for reasonable accommodations in the college setting. And accommodations can really vary from college to college. So students should be asking questions and talking with the disability support offices at the universities that they're looking into prior to committing to that university. And this is really important because the expectations for students really change in college. So we want to talk about some of those gaps that we've seen as educators over time. So the students need to be able to apply for accommodations in the college setting. So the student has to be able to connect with the disability support office, self-identify, talk about their needs, and talk about their disability. They have to have self-advocacy skills. So the expectation is that the student will be able to articulate what they need and speak up when something is not working out for them in the college setting. Students also need to really understand the expectations. So students are not often aware that some colleges might not provide the same accommodations or the same types of flexibility that they may have had in high school. So it's really important that we're preparing students for that shift in the expectations. And then we have this final bullet here, which says excuses versus skill development versus accommodation. So the college expectation is that students will have the skills to complete work and to live independently if they're living on a college campus. So accommodations are meant to level the playing field, but the expectation is that the student's going to be doing the same work as every other student in that classroom. So modifications aren't really a feature of college education. It's not really a feature of the college accommodations process.
Thank you, Annie. We've learned a lot, and part of what we're taking is what Annie just described, that big jump from the supportive environment of high school, where they're working to help a student move through that process, to college, where a student is expected to manage and engage in that process on their own 2 feet, if you will. That's what informed how we designed the College Readiness Resource Center. And what rests behind a lot of the articles that we read is to unpack implications that may not be obvious at first blush for folks who aren't simmering in it like Annie and I are on a daily basis. So the CRRC is how we refer to the College Readiness Resource Center. It's a mouthful. It's important for our families and educators because it can give them tools to consider how to best prepare over the long term, not just second semester senior year, so that we can help begin to set students up to engage in practices to increase independence, access to material without modifications as time goes on, and to begin to practice more independent decision-making and problem solving earlier on in their high school career, and even earlier, frankly. So that's our message, really, is start early. If there's one thing we can say right now, wherever you are right now, start now. If you are here with a child in second grade, that's terrific because it's not too early. What we have learned is that by planning and developing skills over time, you're building a cumulative effect of confidence, fund of knowledge, and those problem-solving skills I described earlier. It helps students then kick off to that independence once they get to high school. It's also relevant for students who aspire to engage in the workforce immediately after high school too. In fact, one of the things that we focus on in several articles is normalizing the idea that going to college is one of many options. In fact, there's a whole article, College, One of Many Options, to help us begin to help guide you in thinking through, well, maybe my student isn't ready for college yet, or maybe really doesn't like to learn in traditional classroom type settings. And that's an okay thing to consider. We try and walk you through some of the ways to think about that. So as Annie pointed out before, gaps in service delivery is a huge issue. And I wanted to unpack that a little bit more and why we designed it the way we did. We know that parents need more support. We know that teachers for students with visual impairments need more support. They're often traveling between schools and dealing with high caseloads. Vocational rehabilitation or transition counselors need more support because they're also working with students in a wide range of districts and may or may not have had a lot of experience with students enrolling in college. And post-secondary planning in this day and age is a complicated process. It's been the foundation of my whole career. I just watched even a webinar last night about it. And it's still hard for me to keep up with the changes and the dynamics going on in post-secondary education in 2021. One thing I can tell you though, it is different than you might think it is nowadays. But the most effective way to do any sort of post-secondary planning is to start early, engage with your VR supports, engage with your TBI, and utilize these tools to ask informed questions. Additionally, a large gap exists in many schools, not all, but many, in the availability and support provided by school counselors. Many of us as parents or adults in the room are familiar with the old model of school counseling or guidance counseling that might help you plan your post-secondary life. But right now, our school counselors, it's National School Counselor Week, by the way, shout out to all the school counselors out there. We know that they are often working with caseloads that are significantly higher than standards suggest. They're working with sometimes over 400 students per counselor, and that makes it difficult for them to create the very thoughtful and careful and unique planning that's required for our students to plan thoughtfully for the best post-secondary transition and outcome. And it also requires that coordination with state VR agents and so on. So in the busyness of our systems, it's hard to plan for the needs of our students. And it's hard to empower yourselves without good, robust resources that integrate all these different pieces of the system. That's why we're here. And we know what we think may help you become stronger advocates for yourself and your children and your students. So enter the CRRC. So when we started this project, we all had this in mind. We knew that there were three core populations that we needed to reach: educators, that would be teachers, TVIs, counselors, VR and transition counselors, anyone working, paraprofessionals working and supporting students in the K-12 setting, and are gonna engage in the college search process one way or another. Orientation and mobility instructors as well are often involved in helping a student visit a college campus, check it out, see how it feels. So this is definitely designed for all of those different pieces of the equation. It's also designed for families, and we absolutely have a section for students to begin to empower themselves.
So when we put this together, we really had usability in mind. We envisioned users, reading the material, assessing where they or the student was currently at, and then identifying the next steps that they needed to take. So the site is obviously accessible for screen readers. We've organized the information to help kind of direct audiences. We brought in experts, we've used data, we had cumulatively loads of years of experience to inform these pieces. And we also went into this project understanding that knowing something is not the same as doing something. So sometimes it can be hard, as we all know, to move from contemplation to action. And so we're striving to create a supportive environment here, a community of practice where users can gather information and map out an organized approach that's going to work for them. So we have articles, we have guides, webinars, skill videos, resources, and so much more to assist users in this process.
So today, what we are going to do is walk you through the different elements of the College Readiness Resource. I'll walk you to help make your time as you begin to get to know it a little more efficient, a little more effective. So like we noted earlier, we knew anyone landing on this page is going to be busy and possibly overwhelmed at trying to think about how to help their special high school student or younger student get ready for their next steps. So we wanted to think about the different experiences and mindset of each of you coming into this. Thus, we created material unique for the different needs of your different audiences. We know you're busy, and making these different experiences may make the material a bit more meaningful and user-friendly right out of the gate. So we have also learned from running our programs that some of the foundational gaps that we discussed earlier with some of the statistics also led to less informed planning, because there were assumptions about students' skills. There may be a lack of information available to help inform what skills are effective in high school and how those translate into college, and how students' independence may translate into success in post-secondary education. So we worked hard to address some areas that may not be necessarily right at the front of your mind, and really help raise those questions to the front of your mind. so that you can respond with creative, innovative ideas and advocate more effectively earlier. So another thing, and we'll talk about academics in just a moment, but what we did is created a landing page for students, families, and then educators. And as you land into the College Readiness Resource Center, the landing page, which we have on our slide in surrounded by green, you'll then have a chance to scroll down to your unique community. You can click on any of them. No one's going to monitor you, but you might start with the audience to which you most sort of identify. And then we move to our foundational pieces. We wanted to give you a guide. There we go. So you'll land on a page that looks very similar to this. So let's pretend you're an educator and you have a student who's in 9th grade and you're wondering where to go. And you're super busy and you've got 20 minutes. I would recommend starting on the Get Started button. We really created that with a very user-friendly, speaking your language introduction to the College Readiness Resource. It's robustly linked with related articles within the resource that relate to each sort of section that we walk you through. So that's a really quick way to get started, to know, okay, first I need to do this, then I need to do that, then I need to do this other thing. And so you have a punch list ready to go if you don't have a lot of time to kind of assemble things in your own mind. We've gotten a lot of feedback from educators that that's one of the biggest obstacles they have to creating college readiness related material, is they're just busy and they don't have time to go out and research and figure it out. The Getting Started button is there for you. We have similar buttons for families and for students as well. On this other sections, though, we also have identified that a key for all audiences is the legal landscape between high school and college. It's a big change, and often students, families, and educators are unaware of the implications of it. Annie began to give you a taste of some of those changes. And so we've written a couple of robust articles for each of our audience, really addressing this in terms that are addressed to the experiences of a family, which is going to be very different than that of an educator, and the worries and the concerns they may have. So the Know Their Rights article on our landing page here for educators is your quick start in that realm.
Great. Can you give us some examples of what you might mean?
Yeah, I can chime in. So some examples might be something like when a student loses the support team that they may have become accustomed to in high school. So colleges don't have paraprofessionals, TVIs, one-on-one aides to support students. So for educators, we've framed this around helping their students know their rights and how things change once the student graduates from high school. So we explore what the end of these services that a student may have had in high school will mean for the student, so that the professionals who work with them, the educators who work with them, can highlight some of those skills that the student's going to need to develop, which is why we actually encourage that folks start on this stuff really early as they can, so students can develop those skills.
Awesome. We also, to complement the Know Your Rights article, we have a sort of robust how-to guide for our very popular College Readiness Checklist, which can serve as an effective conversation starter once a student and a family articulates that their desire to pursue a college education is real, and they want to begin to explore this. You could use the CRRC even in elementary school with an elementary school age student to help you all get on the same page about what are some of the goals or the goal skills that a student will need by the time they're exiting grade 12, anytime between 18 and 22, depending on the school and the sequence that a student's in. What are the skills they need by then? And then allows you all to backwards plan to build up those skills over time. finally, to get you started on the right foot, we included on the educator landing page a guide to academic rigor. And this is an area that you may or may not have a great deal of control over, but you may. But helping you understand some of the pros and the consequences of reduced academic rigor for students' critical thinking skills and for some of the independent critical thinking skills that colleges assume students have. It's important to have a foundational understanding of what that means and just some usable language that will help empower you to think again and possibly backwards plan to help support your students' skill development over time. So to give you a sense of a super user-friendly tool, I alluded to the College Readiness Checklist just a few moments ago. And this is a resource that can impact your conversations now. Again, we want to give you tools that are usable as you walk out of this webinar. The College Readiness Resource is designed as a conversation starter. It focuses on skills that lead to independence and effective transition to post-high school activities, such as work and college. But these are skills that are built sequentially. This includes academic skills, executive functioning skills, access technology skills, and other traditional blindness skills, orientation and mobility, independent living skills, and so on, as well as pre-employment skills, so that you have a robust set of questions to ask and reflections to ask in the student's voice. I can cross the street independently. And a student can assess whether or not he or she has the skills to do that. And then you can backwards plan to reach that goal. So another good example is typing skills. I just ran across an article in the Journal of Vision Impairment and Blindness about job skills in the 2020s. And the article notes, quote, the requirements for digital skills, excuse me, is rapidly increasing across all types of job and salaries for jobs requiring greater digital skills are the highest, excuse me. So essentially, blindness and assistive tech are prerequisites, but not panaceas for employment. Bottom line is we need these skills for all goals, many goals after high school. And knowing this idea earlier on in a student's education allows time to build those skills more robustly and to integrate them into the habits of students building about how they learn, how they engage, how they pursue questions that are meaningful and relevant to them. That's empowering, and it's going to broaden their world. It also gives them time to layer on additional tools such as Zoom text, voiceover, JAWS, to manage visual fatigue, and other issues that arise as the workload ramps up once one gets into higher education and or the workforce. Finally, a little tour through our Getting Academically Fit article. We developed articles reflecting many layers and many issues. As you can see, Annie and I bring complementary layers and perceptions to getting academically fit even. So for example, we appreciate that many educators may have little experience or training in college counseling. It's not a traditional piece of teacher training. Yet, often we find ourselves in the position of college advising. So as we noted at the beginning of the presentation, we want to give you tools to develop these skills in your students and yourself over time. So this article, Getting Academically Fit, while taking you through a range of typical college readiness courses and a traditional set of courses that college assumes students have experienced, this is going to help teach you some of the related issues that these courses contribute to, such as fund of knowledge, independence, and how those relate to a typical college experience. For example, we know that writing is one of the strongest indicators of college success. We all know the pandemic has reduced writing assignments and writing rigor and often writing feedback. So our students aren't getting a whole lot of feedback about the quality of the writing, the depth of their writing, and they may have misplaced assumptions about the strength of their writing right now and what rigorous, extensive, in-depth college writing might assume of them. A pro tip, there is also a thing called grade inflation that we need to keep in mind. And that can also mislead students into assuming that they have the skills for college. What we know is that grade inflation can lead one to think that they are college ready and it may meet general college admission standards, but they are not college ready, they are just college eligible. And it's a complicated issue in our field right now. And that's part of what we're trying to address in articles like this that are sort of peeling the Band-Aid off a little bit and really giving you concrete perspective on how to advise your student. Finally, I want to note that the college experience nowadays is quite different than it might have been 25 years ago for some of us experienced folks on the call. There are a range of college experiences out there that may or may not lead to a associate's degree or bachelor's degree. And part of what we're trying to unpack in this college readiness resource is some of those other paths as well, so that you have a broad range of options that you're helping your student aim to that could very wonderfully meet their goals without some of the lack of success that pursuing perhaps a full bachelor's degree may imply. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Annie.
Thanks, Leslie. There is so much great stuff in the College Readiness Resource Center. We wanted to highlight just a few pieces just to give you a sense of the different types of stuff we have in there. So right here, we have a list of kind of the different articles that are in the Resource Center. So this first one, college, is it the right option for me? This one kind of guides the user through what the expectations are for college, and also looks at what other options might be available if college is not the best option for that student at that time. College, not a one size fits all. That's a piece that highlights the variables, the types of colleges, the options and opportunities for students. Journey to Independence is another great article that we have. This one's focused on skill development for independence. So the sorts of things that students are really going to need in the college setting. Filling the Gaps. This is one that's not often addressed for students with disabilities in general, but this one's about planning a gap year. So some students really benefit from a gap year between high school and college, sometimes to focus on independent living skills and to practice academic skills. So this piece provides some guidance on that journey. We have a piece on tech competencies for college readiness. As we have noted, technology is a key component for college success. So with college readiness in mind, in this piece, we discuss what students need and how to get them ready, and how to use the technology competencies checklist that we have to help them plan ahead. We have some articles on the college tour process too. When students sign up to take a tour of a college, tour guides in the admissions office, they don't know that the student is visually impaired or has another type of disability unless the student discloses that. So these pieces walk students and families through the considerations for college tours, the questions to ask, the accommodations to consider, so that they're actually getting a tour experience that can inform their college search process. We have articles on questions to ask the Disability Service Office. So the Disability Service Office, and sometimes I should note, it might have a different name. Sometimes it's called Accessibility Services. Sometimes it's called Student Disability Services, Disability Support Services. They can be, those folks in that office can be a key partner in the success of a student in college. So it's really critical that students are engaging with the people in that office during the search process and absolutely prior to committing to the college. And so this piece that we've written is designed to help students do that. It gives them questions, considerations, things to look for, things to ask about. We have a piece on accommodations beyond academics. Sometimes students and families are so focused on the academic accommodations because that's a core part of going to college, but they forget about the other aspects of living on a college campus, like housing accommodations and recreation and transportation. The ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, covers accommodations for all aspects of campus life. So that piece really outlines considerations for students to think about, things to ask about, and things to use. And there's so many, 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 many more articles and tools and videos for you to use as well when you're exploring the college readiness resource that we've created.
Great, thank you, Annie. Well, this slide definitely wins best title, that's for sure. So Leslie, if you want to turn your camera on, I'm going to ask you again, what have we learned? What are we continuing to learn? How can we help?
Well, we're here to help is the bottom line. This resource is evolving, so we will be continuing to add to it and enrich it based on feedback we get from folks like you and others out in the field. But the bottom line, as you've probably surmised, it's complicated. We're working to make it a little less complicated and to empower you in whatever role you're in with information that's up to date and integrating what we know from adolescent development, from educational psychology, from all of the realms of college counseling, exploring first generation college aspiring students, all the way to students with additional disabilities. We're here to help. We're here to help shift awareness. We're here to help students shift their mindset about what is possible and what independence means for them. And we're working to fill the knowledge gap by supporting you, as we say in this lovely slide, with filling in that knowledge gap. We're developing a plan for more articles. Share this widely, please, and let us know what you'd like to see. We may very well have it on a very long list of articles we're still working our way through.
And it's also important to recognize that students may have comorbid or co-occurring disabilities and conditions to consider as well. So students might need additional accommodations or supports in the college setting. This might include students with chronic health conditions like diabetes or Crohn's disease or autoimmune disorders, students with mobility impairments, so students who use wheelchairs or other types of mobility devices, as well as students with learning disabilities, autism, and intellectual disabilities. So when moving into college preparation, it's important to consider all of the students' needs. And we are working together to address the systemic barriers impacting college readiness and post-secondary planning and to create better informed options for students and their families. And we're so glad that you guys could all be here today to join us so we could share this amazing resource with you all.
Great, fantastic. Before we move on to the Q&A ending of our show tonight, I'd like to just mention 2 upcoming sessions that we have. Like I said in the beginning, this is a 3-part series. Tonight we kick things off. Tonight's going to be followed by 2 Compass informational sessions. As Leslie mentioned, Compass is our direct service kind of baby underneath the College Success umbrella. So next week, we'll have an info session, same time, same place, Thursday at 4 p.m., Compass, a student perspective. So a past graduate of Compass will be joining us to help answer your questions. And then again, after the break here in Massachusetts, we're going to move things to March 3rd, again, 4 p.m. on a Thursday. We're going to take it from an educator perspective. So we hope you can join us. Same registration page, same Zoom link, shared by me day before and the week of. So we look forward to it. We hope you can join us. So now let's open it up for questions. The top-notch team we have has really done a great job kind of behind the scenes answering, but there are a few sitting here. Annie, you jumped in on Josh's question. So why don't we start back to that? And then we have 3 live ones. So Josh, what advice would you give aspiring students who are seeking campus environments that embrace disability as a valid part of diversity, equity, inclusion efforts? Are there campuses with disability cultural centers to help provide peer and community support? So a 2-part question, Annie.
I love this question. And Leslie and I chat about this all the time. So I put in a link to a couple articles on colleges that have disability cultural centers. This is something that is growing at a number of institutions. And so I think that students could start by looking specifically at schools that have these cultural centers. Additionally, asking the Disability Support Office about any student clubs related to disability. A number of schools actually have clubs, disabled student clubs, so students can build community and build resources when they're on campus. But most importantly, I think that students, especially students who are blind or visually impaired, should also be connecting with the Disability Support Office to see if they can put them in touch with other students who have similar conditions or disabilities on campus so that they can talk to those students and get a sense of what campus life is like for students with visual impairments or blindness on campus. And so I think that that's a big piece of the puzzle for students. Students can also look at the university's mission. This is something I typically tell students and families to do. Look at the mission of the university, look at the mission of the Disability Support Office. See if the university's mission or diversity, equity, and inclusion statement actually includes disability as an aspect of diversity on campus. That is an important piece to consider. And looking at the breadth of what the Disability Support Office on campus does, some disability support offices are only focused on ADA and Section 504 compliance. That's it. And some have a wider scope to increase radical inclusivity or to train faculty and staff. So that can really tell you a lot about the scope of work of the Disability Support Office at the university, and that might help inform a student's decision about whether or not that school is going to be a good fit for them. So I hope that helps.
That was thorough. Thank you, Annie. So next up here is a question from Jill. How can we add suggestions for additional information that we would like to see? So I'm assuming, Jill, you mean for the College Resource Center. If there's something that you'd like us to address, how do you communicate that? So anybody else, please feel free to come off mute and answer this in terms of panelists, but I would suggest contacting us at collegesuccess@perkins.org. We are fully accessible to you and we are here to help. And the College Readiness Resource Center, it is a mouthful, is always going to be evolving and changing. So we want your feedback. So please send along any ideas and thoughts you may have. We really appreciate it. Great. So next on here is from Eli. What is your thought on offering peer mentors regarding entering college? Leslie, you want to take this one?
Sure. I saw that in the Q&A.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I know there's a couple programs out there that do that type of thing. I think this is a yes and answer. That peer mentors, we know, are an effective support mechanism to support a student, a peer, through hard times, give some feedback on things that you figured out that may have worked for you in your transition or in the mentor's transition to college, for example, figuring out how to talk to a professor, advocating and working to engage with the Disability Service Office to secure something that you may be struggling to get in terms of an accommodation and even getting along with roommates or what have you. So I think that that's a powerful support mechanism. And so it's a yes and in that the skill development we're often suggesting and advocating for in the College Readiness Resource Center is about activities that happen before one gets to college, ideally, but we know that doesn't often happen. And one of the bumps in the road, one of the obstacles our students encounter is they land in college without the tools, the practice with self-advocacy, and sometimes the self-awareness that is needed to effectively engage with the resources at the college. But if you're only typing 20 words a minute and you're trying to do college level work in a full-time load of courses, that's maybe a heavier lift than a peer mentor has the perspective or skills to assist with. So it's a yes and peer mentor and better skill development earlier, or a supportive network once a student's there to help do some of the more technical support in addition. I hope that helps answer your question, Eli.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of skill development, I know you're going to want this one. This one's from Kelly. How important is knowing JAWS in college and beyond? That's probably one of the most popular questions we get. My son primarily uses Google Classroom with VoiceOver on an iPad for all of his schoolwork.
You know, it's a great question. And one of my other colleagues who I know is behind the curtain right now may step in on this too, Andrea. This is a, I would need to know more question. The first thing I'd say is that an assistive technology evaluation would be the first step I would recommend considering if your student's still in high school. That assistive tech eval is going to look at your student's vision at their current skill level, introduce them to a wide range of appropriate technology that may serve their needs. The thing that you're looking to gain is efficiency, fluency, efficacy, techniques and approaches that reduce visual fatigue, because we often see students wrestling with physical and visual fatigue without other resources to turn to when they can't use their vision anymore to access material, and that limits the time that they can spend tackling their tasks. And with appropriate technology, they can very effectively. So in answer to the Google Classroom with iPad, it's going to get a lot more complicated very quickly beyond Google Classroom, but I'm psyched to hear that he's already had experience with a learning management system. That's crucial as a concept experience. We do recommend that students gain fluency on a laptop and whatever an assistive tech eval would recommend, whether it be an iOS-based, Mac or Apple laptop, which provides VoiceOver, which is very different than VoiceOver on an iPad. VoiceOver on an iPad is more of a swipe tool, and VoiceOver on a laptop requires a knowledge of a series of commands. So it requires keyboard skills plus knowledge of what those commands are to robustly utilize that tool. JAWS is similar, but it's typically on a PC, and then there's Zoom text in the middle. And so an assistive tech eval would be the best place to go for the best combination for your student and his or her needs. So I hope, Andrew, if I missed something, kick in, but hopefully I covered the key pieces, and I hope that was helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. Well, I think we've made it through all of the Q&A. Behind the scenes, folks, thanks for supporting us through the webinar tonight. And to all of you, thank you so much for joining us. We're so grateful that you were able to be with us tonight. And we hope that you can join us for the other 2 sessions coming up, like I said, next Thursday and then again on March 3rd. I will be in touch with the recording and links. And if you have further questions, please send them along and we will get right to them. So as Leslie mentioned multiple times, here at Perkins, we are here to help you. So again, thank you for joining us and be well.